Hit it.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to ATL Prime Sports. Another wild weekend in college football. A Hail Murray in the NFL. And, it was just wild. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers are still undefeated. They beat Joey Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. The Falcons were off. The Dogs were off. And Georgia Tech will be off next week as their game has already been canceled. We had 15 cancellations in college football last weekend. I'm Todd Corder, along with my sidekick, JJ, on the other side of the ATL, and our famous producer, Wayne, in Memphis. Gentlemen, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good.
Wonderful. Can't complain. Also, Georgia Tech was off last weekend, too. Georgia State
They're off every weekend.
Put on a pretty good show last weekend. We'll get more into that. But, boy, it was dreadful not having the Falcons or the Dogs here in the Atlanta area, or really the Yellow Jackets. Like I said, it really made up for it having the Panthers.
All right, guys, you can catch us on Twitter at ATL Prime Sports, at myself at Corder Todd, at JJ Get You One, and Wayne at RWY Jr. You can catch us all on Twitter at those particular spots on Twitter. Guys, let's get right to it. We already had a coach fired in college football. It was South Carolina's Will Muschamp. And guys, I don't know about you, but I was a little bit surprised that he was let go in midseason. JJ, what do you think?
I called it last week. I said he was on the hot seat. I said if he lost again, he might be out of there. Said it last week. So, no, I wasn't really surprised. He's had 3 consecutive starts, 3 consecutive winning seasons, 3 consecutive bowl berths. And since then, it's looked really, really ugly. A lot of injuries last year. They gave him this year. Had a big win against Auburn. But, hey, he's 3-17 versus AP top 25 teams. He's 0-4 versus Clemson. The guy hasn't done his job against his rivals. If it weren't for Rodrigo missed field goal a couple years ago, maybe South Carolina doesn't upset Georgia that day. And it's 2-18 against top 25 teams. So he didn't do well there. He's a great guy, a really great coach. A lot of people liked him. A lot of the alumni, a lot of the boosters there, they were mumbling, he still had a job to do. And we mentioned this off air, TC. This is an all SEC schedule, so it doesn't make it any easier. But Will Muschamp, you got to win some games, and he didn't do that.
Well, he won one game. It kind of hurt my spirit. He beat up on Auburn. I didn't like that.
You know what? I mean, Muschamp got off to a great start at South Carolina the first 3 years. He beat Michigan in a bowl game. He was starting to become one of the winningest coaches in South Carolina history, but it's fallen apart for him the last year and a half or so. And, they got torched by Ole Miss this weekend. And, the former Georgia football player has now been fired by 2 SEC programs. He was fired at Florida, and now he's fired at South Carolina. He was well-liked, like JJ said, at the university. But now South Carolina will go ahead, and they'll have intern coach Mike Bobo, former Georgia player and offensive coordinator, and a former coach at Colorado State. And that's where South Carolina will take over. Guys, it's just a sad situation. He was well-liked by the players, and best of luck to him on his next journey. I'm sure he'll get a defensive coordinator job somewhere in the SEC.
Well, he was with Auburn for a while, I think one season. But I kind of look for Bobo to stay on as head coach there.
Wow, that he does have the head coaching experience. Was an offensive coordinator for Georgia for a long time. Scored a lot of points as a Georgia offensive coordinator. Had a decent season as a Colorado State head coach. I believe he went to one bowl game there off the top of my head. Bobo does have the ability to get this team playing better, and if they do, who knows? But in a pandemic-filled year, if we could, real quick, let's get into some candidates here who could fill in. If you ask me, Wayne, I agree with you. I think Bobo has a shot to get the job if he plays. gets the players playing well at the end of the year. But personally, I think they're going to go in a different direction. And you know what? I think a top-tier coach right now, you got to look in two areas. Coastal Carolina with Jamie Chadwell. And then number one for me, give the guy another shot in the SEC. Hugh Freeze from Liberty right now is your number one and number two guys. Maybe Tony Elliott, the offensive coordinator for Clemson, or there's three of my favorite guys to replace Will Muschamp as the next head coach. What do you think, TC?
First guy I thought of was Hugh Freeze too. We'll see. I mean, right now it's too soon to speculate. Mike Bodo is the intern coach. Let's see how he does. And that's really all. The first guy that came to mind for me was Hugh Freeze. You mentioned the other names. Billy Napier would be another name. We'll see if his name will surface towards the end of the season. But you know, all the guys you mentioned, right now they're doing bang up jobs where they're at, and that's probably the last thing on their mind is to leave somewhere else. But our job here in the on this podcast is to send out names and speculate like the rest of the media. All right, guys, let's go on to our next subject. That would be Jim Harbaugh at the University of Michigan. Michigan is on some rough times. First 1-3 start since 1967. They looked great the first game against Minnesota and awful the last three, and they've taken quite a beating against Indiana and Wisconsin, two top 10 teams right now in the country. And you know what? Jim Harbaugh did really well the first 5 years at Michigan. I mean, he was 48-18. Yes, he was 0-5 against Ohio State, 3-3 against Michigan State, has a winning record against Penn State, and you know, even 500 against Wisconsin. This is a situation now where you know, a lot of fans are calling for his ouster, and you better be careful what you wish for, because you may get it, because who are you going to get to replace him, number one? And number two, this is a pandemic season. You can kind of throw it a little bit out the window. He's got a 5-star quarterback coming in next year. So, you know, at $9 million a year, I would be shocked if they parted ways at the end of this year, and I don't think they'll ever fire him. So I think he'll have next season, and we'll see after that.
Yeah. What's his buyout?
Now, buyout, I do not know, but he's being paid $9 million next season, and that's Nick Saban money. And of course, Michigan has Nick Saban expectations, and to me, that's the way Ohio State's playing right now. It's not happening.
Yeah.
Well, I'm with you, TC. I think they're going to hang on to Harbaugh. I really do. And here's why. The guy's had 3 10-win seasons. Right now, according to 247 Sports, he's got a number 9 recruiting class in the country. The guy can recruit with the best of them. It is a pandemic football year. Heck, remember, folks, these guys at first thought they weren't going to play football. Now here they are a couple weeks later, we're going to play football. Okay, so you get into the season, everybody, Wisconsin has some COVID-19 woes. It's in your head. There's opt-outs. It's a crazy year. I think this one goes by. I think they give Harbaugh another year. Unless Harbaugh gets an NFL job and he opts out of his Michigan duties, I don't think Michigan will let him go. I don't think he'll leave. I think Jim Harbaugh wants to right the ship, and here's why. Again, he can do it. We've seen him win 3 straight seasons, 10 wins. The only thing he hasn't done there is, let's face it, beat Ohio State. If he does that, a lot of the haters, per se, will be right off his back, Todd.
Well, 1-4 bowl record, that doesn't help. That the 5-star quarterback commitment is J.J. McCarthy, and he told the fans, take 3 breaths and have faith. Well, I guess they're going to have to take 3 breaths, because he's going to come next year and he's going to compete for the starting job. Jim Harbaugh hasn't really had a great quarterback since he's been at Michigan. His best quarterback was the graduate transfer out of Iowa, Jake Rudock, who did a bang-up job there. He started off real slow. They lost his first game there against Utah, and then after that, they righted the ship and did very well. So we'll see what happens for the future of Jim Harbaugh, but currently our future here on ATL Prime Sports. We've got the voice of the Georgia State Panthers, Dave Cohen, joining us. Dave, how are you this evening?
Pretty good. How are you guys doing?
All right.
Good.
Doing pretty good. Looking forward to the Thanksgiving break. Sorry, tough loss for Georgia State this weekend, losing to App State 17-13. A defensive battle, which you and I did not expect last week, neither did JJ and Wayne. I thought the defense played great. It was an evenly played game. I mean, wow. I mean, Dave, the defense was definitely good enough to win it and then some, but you got to give App State credit on defense. They played well there, and they were just a little bit better than Georgia State.
Yeah, you're right. And so the theme of the COVID 2020 season for Georgia State football continues, and that word is consistency or lack thereof, because we've only seen it on maybe one or two occasions. The one that jumps out is the win against East Carolina. I wouldn't even rank the Louisiana Monroe win in that category because, that was a team that was averaging 13 points a game that ended up scoring, 31 or 34 points against us. And we had to score into the 40s to beat them. If you listened or watched on Saturday, the one glaring stat that they put up on the screen and that we used on the radio was that was the 7th meeting all time between Georgia State and Appalachian State in football. Again, when we talked last week, I thought it would be a high scoring affair. They score a lot of points. Georgia State scores a lot of points, gives up a lot of points. But in the prior 6 meetings between Georgia State and Appalachian State, the Mountaineers had won all 6. Now they've won all 7. But in the first 6 meetings, the average margin of victory was 38 points, which tells you the story of how that series has gone for Georgia State. And that's in Boone and that's in Atlanta. And remember last year, we jumped out on them early in Atlanta, 21-7, and they came back and scored like 56 against us to beat us 50-something to 30-something. So we said a couple of times on the radio on Saturday night, Harper Lavelle, who does color with me, and Sam Crenshaw kind of looked at each other in the fourth quarter, and it's like, you do realize we have a lead on Appalachian State in the fourth quarter, and it's on the road.
Yeah.
And the defense is playing great.
Yeah, we had not experienced that before. And it was like, wow, we got a shot to actually get off the mountain with a W.
Dave, the defense was spectacular. They held App State to 2.8 yards a rushing attempt. You and I last week, along with JJ and Wayne, we would have never dreamed of that. Just what an effort by that Georgia State defensive line and linebacking core.
Yeah, no question. We commented, again, a couple of times on the radio on how well Georgia State's down defensive linemen and the rush ends, Victor Hayward's, the Jordan Strong's, how well they played against what we know is a really good, under normal circumstances, a really good Appalachian State offensive line. Again, you don't put up the kind of numbers that they put up on the ground and in the air if you don't have a good offensive line, which they do. But Georgia State, played really well. And that gets back to the one thing we've been consistent at is our inconsistency. One week we're scoring in the 40s and we're giving up in the 30s, or we score 52 and give up 59. We're on the mountain and our defense is playing, for the most part, lights out, and a team that averages in the 40s scores 13?
I mean, what a spectacular effort. I mean, yeah, Dave, you had to have been really pleased. I mean, the defense grew up a lot. Let's see if they can do it. They can do it down the stretch.
That's the key question right there, because there are 2 games left, right? You got at South Alabama this Saturday down in Mobile, and then the following week Georgia Southern comes to Atlanta.
Yep.
So right now we're 3-4 and 2-4 in the Sun Belt Conference. Now, people would say, well, what does that mean bowl implication-wise? Under normal circumstances, the Sun Belt is tied in with 5 bowls. Last year, when we went to the Arizona Bowl out in Tucson, we were the last Sun Belt team that will represent the Sun Belt in the Arizona Bowl, too far west. But they've added the Myrtle Beach Bowl, and that's part of the Sun Belt Bowl rotation. Makes total sense with Coastal Carolina 20 minutes away. But if Coastal Carolina, I think Coastal Carolina plays Liberty this weekend. Coastal Carolina could be one of those teams under this crazy schedule that we're playing this year that could find themselves playing for the opportunity to be in a bowl outside of what we'll call the Sun Belt Bowl tie-ins.
Yeah.
If that happens, well, then that still leaves Georgia State with an opportunity no matter what that record is, unless we, God forbid, lose the final 2 games and we're sitting at 3-6. But you already know Coastal Carolina is going somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Appalachian State 6-1, they're going somewhere.
Yeah.
Georgia Southern 6-2, they're going somewhere. And over in the West, Louisiana Lafayette is 7-1. They're going somewhere. So that's 4 teams right there that if there are enough bowl spots, those are the first 4 out of the Sun Belt that are going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Over in the Sun Belt West, Louisiana Lafayette's the only team with a winning record. South Alabama and Arkansas State are both 3-5. Forget Texas State, they're 1-9, and Louisiana Monroe can't play again this week against Louisiana Tech because of COVID. Doesn't matter, they're 0-8. So it comes down to Troy and Georgia State. We've beaten Troy, but they're 4-3, and we're 3-4.
Right.
So it's too early to say what the bowl possibilities are because, number one, we don't know actually which bowl games we'll be able to play. And number two, does Coastal Carolina take one of the Sun Belt Bowl spots, or do they move up and go outside the Sun Belt Bowl possibilities for what we'll call a higher level bowl?
Yeah. I look for them to go into a higher level bowl myself.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave.
It depends upon how they finish out. And, again, Liberty aside, because that's a non-conference game, how they finish out in conference. And really right now it's 7-0. You hate to call anybody a lock.
Yeah.
But even if they lose to Liberty, chances are they're still going to win, 1 or 2 of their remaining league games, depending on how many games they get to play. So.
You're listening to Dave Cohen right here on ATL Prime Sports. Dave, you jumped the gun. Coastal Carolina, App State this weekend, battle for the SEC. I called it the SEC, the Sun Belt East. It's like an SEC matchup. It feels like it. I'm super excited about it. Give me a winner. Coastal Carolina stay unbeaten.
Well, let me tell you, the one thing that has changed in that game, if you were not watching or were not listening, Georgia State got a great hit on Zach Thomas.
They did.
Knocked him out of the ball game. And thankfully, he's going to be okay. They had to take him off on a stretcher. But thankfully, from what I read, he's going to be okay. Never met the young man, but obviously you don't want anybody getting hurt.
Never.
But they didn't really miss a beat when they brought Jacob Huseman in. But the question is, how much better would they be in that Thomas is the number one guy? And when we talk about their offense being in a rhythm, you would think that obviously with Zach Thomas, you got a better shot. So does that affect them at all going into the Coastal Carolina game? And to add on that, if they play offensively against Coastal Carolina, the way they showed against Georgia State, might be a long night for them. Yeah. Our problem is that offensively, we really beyond scoring that first touchdown in the first quarter, we mustered a couple of field goals the rest of the way. Coastal Carolina is probably not going to run into that situation. Probably not. I mean, it's possible, but I would favor Coastal Carolina right now in that game. Appalachian State better have a good week of practice before they play the Chanticleers. If they play the same way they played against Georgia State, they might get run out of the stadium.
Yeah.
Well, it's exciting to have a game at that magnitude for the Sun Belt Conference. But Jay, let's talk about the Georgia State game coming up against South Alabama. Give me a scouting report real quick on South Alabama. We got about 4.5 minutes left.
Well, the first thing that jumps out at you is that they've lost 3 in a row. And someone might say, well, they've lost 3 in a row. They're terrible. Well, they're not terrible. They're 3-5. So, they've played one more game than we have. But the 3 games that they lost in this 3-game losing streak coming into this week, At Georgia Southern, not an easy place to play. At Coastal Carolina, not an easy place to play, especially this year. At Louisiana Lafayette, not an easy place to play. So I see South Alabama kind of in the same situation as Georgia State. It's Georgia State, South Alabama, and Troy and Arkansas State that are kind of hovering. We're in that middle area of the Sun Belt. Obviously, Coastal Carolina, Louisiana Lafayette, and even Appalachian State at 6-1 have separated themselves from the middle of the pack in the Sun Belt. And then don't forget Georgia Southern. I would put them there too. They're 6-2. So these next two games for us are big. You're either going to finish 5-4. You're either going to finish 4-5, or you're going to finish 3-6.
Don't want that.
You don't want that. South Alabama, that game is winnable, but our offense has to show up.
Yep.
We cannot
Game against Georgia Southern's winnable.
Georgia Southern. Well, that game to me, and I said this, I may have said this to you guys last week, but the Georgia Southern game, and I always go back to the year that Georgia State fired head coach Trent Miles with 2 games remaining in the season. And we were 2-8, I think, at that point. And Georgia Southern was the next game in the Georgia Dome. And Tim Lopano, who was our receivers coach, if I remember correctly, took over for the final 2 games. And then came out that week, had a really good week of practice. Georgia Southern, obviously on paper and by record, was the much better team. But Connor Manning and Georgia State got it done that week and beat Georgia Southern in the Georgia Dome.
They did.
For their 3rd win. And then I remember we had to go all the way out to Moscow, Idaho the following week.
Oh, man.
To play Idaho State. Yeah, that was a long trip. To play Idaho State. And we got blown out of that game, played terrible, had 6 turnovers. But my point is, we were not a very good football team that year. But for one afternoon, because the adrenaline is running and the emotions are high, they beat Georgia Southern and finished the season at 3-9. And Sean Elliott was hired shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
So
I like Georgia State's. I like Georgia State's chance against Georgia Southern just because they're playing at home.
Right. Well, and I would agree with you. I would totally agree with you. Of course, the difference this year is there really won't be that home field advantage with a large crowd. That game always guarantees a large crowd with the Georgia State and the Georgia Southern fans. So there will be no energy coming down from the stands, raining down on top of the field, affecting the players. I mean, you know what kind of an atmosphere it's going to be. So it is what it is,
Dave, real quick, got a men's basketball question for you. It looks like I was reading the Georgia State app last week. It looks like the Georgia Tech game is on. Is there any breaking news about the timing of that game yet? And if it'll be on national TV, or give us where we can listen?
Well, so Georgia State will open up the college basketball season November 25 over at McCamish Pavilion. And you may have seen it on Twitter, if you follow me on Twitter, if you follow any of the Georgia Tech or Georgia State basketball, but it's a 9:00 tip.
Okay,
Going to be a late night in downtown Atlanta, I think for Fox Sports South Regional Television.
Yep.
We'll be on radio at either 8:40, probably around 8:45 with our pregame, and then the tip will be at 9:00. So we'll be on 88.5, and then we'll be streaming as well, the Georgia State Athletics mobile app and TuneIn Radio.
Dave, will you be at the arena, or will you have to do it somewhere else?
No, we will be at McCamish.
Okay.
I've been told that Georgia State gets 5 media passes.
Okay. It's so different because, like you mentioned, you did the App State game from the Georgia State stadium in downtown Atlanta. And I've got to ask you, because I've never done a game I've had a monitor to look at replays and do a game, but I've always looked straight out on the field, and that's where everything is. That's got to be much harder to sit here and do a game on a monitor.
It is, and it was a little bit of a challenge, that first game. We've been doing it that way all season, so I think I've done, 3 or 4 of them already.
Right.
And that's the way we're going to do the South Alabama game on Saturday. Obviously, Georgia Southern's a home game, so that'll be a a live game for us. But it does take a little getting used to. But I've kind of settled into a routine. And again, I've got Harper LaBelle and Sam Crenshaw with me, so it's really a 3-man broadcast crew.
Sure.
More normally, Sam is down on the sidelines, but we're utilizing him more because he's up in the booth with us on a virtual broadcast.
That's great.
Great. When we get back to what we'll call a pre-virus normal broadcast and Sam is back on the sidelines, it'll go back to being what it was with regards to the way we divvy up our time. But we make it work. I think it's gone well considering so far. And like I said, if the Falcons can do it and Georgia Tech can do it, then we can do it.
Well, that's correct. You can. There's no doubt about it. So
I don't think any NFL radio crews that are in the NFL are traveling. They're all being done virtually.
Right. That's correct. I heard that too. And
right.
With high school, you're going to be there, and this will be my 12th game in 12 weeks. Knock on wood, obviously, and then we'll have the playoffs after that. And there's precautions taken, but not too much. It really hasn't changed, other than wearing a mask up until the pregame starts, and then you just go and go from there.
Yeah, well, even at our home football games, again, Sam is down in the stands in the first row, but we do not interview Coach Elliott going off the field at halftime or at the end of the game, and we don't have access to the players either.
Well, at the end of the high school game that I did last week, Bowden won the regional championship. It's about 4 miles from the Georgia-Alabama state line. Our sideline guy, I shut it right down to him. He ordered him like he's standing right next to him, interviewing him like there was no pandemic at all. And then I see all these guys on TV, the glasses in between them and all this, and I'm going, boy, this is a completely different world. So that's interesting. It's interesting for sure.
But, even talking to a lot of my radio buddies in the Sun Belt, if they're traveling, a half of them are traveling on their own. They're not traveling with the team. But like, for example, my radio friend who does Louisiana Monroe, they hopped on the charter. They came into Atlanta, went back to Monroe. Now their game is canceled again this week because of COVID issues.
Right.
But they did not travel separately. They traveled with the team to and from Atlanta. And Georgia State is just not going to take that chance with us. I mean, I could technically be in the football bubble, but Harper and Sam and our engineer Rick could not. So
right, different circumstances.
We're not going to change the whole thing.
No reason.
Based on what we can do.
Well, Dave, thanks so much for coming on this week. We're going to take the week off for Thanksgiving, so we'll talk to you during rivalry week for Georgia State and Georgia Southern. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Let's just keep our fingers crossed we play well down in Mobile and that we go into that ball game at 4-4, looking to finish a game above 500, at least in the regular season.
And having a winning season at that, which would be fantastic because other than Georgia, no other local team around here is going to have a winning season. So we'll find out. Dave, thanks so much for coming on. As always, my friend, talk to you soon.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Have a good night.
Yep, you too. All right, Dave Cohen, the voice of the Georgia State Panthers. Check them out this Saturday when they play South Alabama and see if Georgia State can take their record to 4-4 overall. We shall see, guys. Let's go on to the next topic. We're running a few minutes behind, but sometimes that happens. Let's play some fun scenarios, JJ. For the College Football Playoff Committee, I'll let you have the floor.
All right, so this one is deep. It's probably not going to happen, folks. But let's just say the College Football Playoff Committee says, hey, you have to have 6 wins and play in a conference championship game to be in the College Football Playoff. Well, let's say the Big Ten decides too much COVID and they're done. Same with Pac-12. They were late going, too much COVID. Let's just say chaos scenario, TC. Chaos scenario, no Big Ten, no Pac-12 who makes the college football playoff? Or do they expand it in that scenario? This is a fun scenario that could happen in a weird 2020, as weird as it is to say. Now, will it happen?
Anything can happen.
Probably not. Probably not. But what if? What if?
Well, it could happen. Probably not. But this is 2020, so I'm not ruling anything out. We should ask Dave this question next week or in 2 weeks. I think it would be B rather than A. I think they would expand the playoff. No way in God's green earth are they going to let Ohio State
not be in.
Or Wisconsin, if they're undefeated. Each team is going to be highly ranked. They would expand the playoff. Do I think they're going to expand the playoff? And do I think the other scenario is going to happen? No. But for the fun of it, we didn't have fun earlier off the air. We'll have fun now.
Exactly.
Yes, that could happen. Wayne, what do you think, real quick?
It's just some fun to try.
It is. I like it. No, I like it. I get where you're coming from. Wayne, what do you think?
It's so crazy. And here's the real reason I wanted to do this. I'd really like to see a BYU, a Cincinnati, or the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, or heck, we even have a shot at Liberty. If Liberty and Coastal Carolina play each other unbeaten at the end of the year, one of them will have a shot. So
are they scheduled to play each other?
They are scheduled to play each other at the last game of the year.
Who would have thought at the beginning of this season that could be a game for a group of 5 team to somehow, some way slide in the playoff? I still don't think it'll happen. I think if any Power 5 team getting on, or any group of 5 team, I meant group of 5. If any group of 5 team does get in, I think it'll be Cincinnati, then BYU, and then take your pick from the other 2. But then again, it's 2020. Anything's possible. Wayne, what do you think real quick?
Well, I think if Indiana wins this weekend, they're going to go in instead of Wisconsin or maybe even Ohio State.
Yeah, it's a big game this weekend, App State, Coastal Carolina. All right, TC, give us another fun scenario.
Oh, gosh. Well, we'll break it down really quick by conference. The Big 12, to me, their only chance at a playoff unless we start getting chaos and multiple losses. Wayne, can you do me a favor? Can you send DeShaun an invite? He's going to be coming on in a few minutes. Can you send him an email?
Yeah, hang on a second.
All right, thanks. So anyway, JJ, I think Oklahoma State is the only team that has a shot to get in the Big 12, unless, like I said, we get chaos and get multiple 2-loss teams in the ACC and SEC. And I just don't think we're going to get that, but it is 2020. It is possible. So Oklahoma State, to me, is the only shot in the Big 12 as of right now, but that could change. In the SEC, 2 teams have a shot. Alabama and Florida, unless Alabama would have to lose twice in the West. Florida would have to lose twice in the West. Highly unlikely, but you never know. And then we'll run over to the ACC. It's going to be between Clemson and North Carolina, or Clemson and Notre Dame. And who knows, maybe each team will get in, and who knows, maybe Florida and Alabama will get in. We'll go to the Big 10. It's down to 4 teams. Indiana, Northwestern, Ohio State, Wisconsin. Everybody else is out. And the Pac-12, we don't know if they'll play enough games, but I would think it'd be Oregon and USC. So that's where I think it's all at the moment. And we'll have to see how it plays out. I mean, that's not really a scenario. That's kind of what we have left. And, I don't think it's going to be Northwestern. I don't think it's going to be Indiana. I could see Wisconsin potentially winning the Big Ten or Ohio State. Go ahead, man.
So what I was going to piggyback on is
No, go ahead. Just go ahead and piggyback. We got time. Go ahead.
The thing about it is pretty much set. We do think it's going to be Alabama or Florida. There is a scenario where maybe Texas A&M could slip in if maybe Alabama gets beat by Florida, or maybe
twice.
Up again.
Twice.
Exactly. In a scenario, maybe they lose to Auburn. Maybe Auburn gets hot. We know how well Auburn plays.
Smile, Wayne, when JJ says that.
When Auburn is good, and they are playing well at the end of the season, they tend to give Alabama problems. So that could be a scenario there. I'm with you on the Ohio State, Wisconsin more. For me, I am not a believer in Indiana. We will see this weekend if Indiana plays up to potential, but I think Ohio State will cover that spread. That's a little spoiler for later on.
Oh, man, you ruined it. But go ahead. It's okay.
I think Wisconsin's a legitimate program. They're good all the way around in all three phases. They play good defense, especially, and they run the football well. So I think those are your main scenarios. Maybe there's some craziness if Miami can slip back in, but I don't think that'll happen. I think it's Notre Dame, Clemson. I think it's Alabama, Florida. I think it's
Is that your Final Four getting in the playoff?
No. I'm saying
as of right now,
who's still alive? I'm just saying.
Okay, yeah, same as me. Yeah.
Florida, Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State, technically Texas A&M, Florida, Cincinnati. Still, if we're throwing this game out here, and then your Indiana's, Wisconsins are still alive. So,
hey Wayne, is there a way that DeShaun can call in? Just text me a phone number, and I'll text him. Is that possible?
Yeah.
Okay, just do that. Hey, and I'll JJ, keep telling me though. What do you think? I mean, let me see. Oh, DeShaun's texting me. Anyway, JJ, well, go ahead and give me some other scenarios while I get this phone number from Wayne.
I want to harp on this expanded playoff because we have already a situation where the College Football Playoff Committee has delayed the vote. So what happens if you have a Coastal Carolina who goes 10 or 11-0 with the conference championship versus an Ohio State who only plays 5 or 6 games with the conference championship? It's going to be some fun discussion for the College Football Playoff Committee. If they decide to expand, this would be the year. That would be a fun scenario to harp more on. But again, it is pretty much set in still right now. I think the Pac-12 could still have a chance with Oregon. If they play well, they go undefeated. Oregon will still have a shot at being in the college football playoff. So there are still some scenarios here. It's not set in stone. There's still some craziness to be played. BYU's got a pretty solid winning percentage against the teams they play going forward. They're heavily favored. Cincinnati, about the toughest game they have left, Central Florida. So it looks like they'll be the two group of 5 crashers in the party. We'll see if the committee lets 2 into the New Year's 6. That's the scenario I'm only harping on, really, is what does the College Football Playoff Committee do? What do they do? Do they say 6 wins? Do they say 7 wins in a conference title? What's going to be the cutoff? And that's going to be the drama playing out down the rest of the season is the College Football Playoff Committee and then what they're doing in that room.
Speaking of drama, we could get COVID drama. We could get a spectacular player have to sit out down the stretch and change the whole national championship race. So we could get a ton of drama, and anything can happen at this point. I mean, just think of let's just think of Kyle Trask can't play. Say he comes down with COVID in the SEC title game, the Gators are toast. Say Mac Jones comes down with COVID in the SEC championship game, Alabama's in trouble. Now, do they go back and go, well, what happens if Mac Jones would have played? Then they want to – no, you can't do that. Who's on the field is what you've got to do, and that's the end of it. And, just like the Trevor Lawrence, he wasn't on the field. Even if he was on the field, Notre Dame would have beat Clemson because Clemson's defense gave up 47 points. So, I mean, these things, COVID is a factor coming down the stretch.
Absolutely.
What happens if the kid from Ohio State can't play quarterback? Fields. What happens? They play Michigan, and Michigan lucks up, and Harbaugh gets his first win, and they bum rush the field in Ohio State with nobody in the stands. So, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Clemson. Notre Dame did against Clemson. But Florida still they still have a couple games they could slip up on. Let's say you said Kyle Trask goes down with COVID. You expect him to get past Vandy. You expect them to get past Kentucky. Rivalry game at Tennessee. Tennessee's still a decent program. They're playing in the SEC. They're 2-4, sure. That's 2-4 in the SEC, and we've talked about that off air. You throw in a couple cupcakes, they're probably 5-4 at this point. Then they play a weaker LSU team, but LSU has talent. So who knows? If Kyle Trask goes down, things could happen. That would be the what-if scenario to start playing. If these teams can't finish games, and Coastal Carolina and these group of 5 teams do finish the games because they started earlier and they passed the outbreak, who knows what happens? This is going to be fun to watch, fun to play out. And right now, there's quite a few teams still alive in the college football playoff race.
All right, let's DeShaun Tate will be joining us shortly. Let's talk about the Falcons real quick before he comes on. It'll take him a few minutes to log on. The Falcons are 3-6. Can they make the playoffs? Fellas, it starts this Sunday against New Orleans. Drew Brees is not going to play because of multitude to the injuries to his ribs. And the other injury is to his I forget what the other injury is off the top of my head. I know multitude injuries to his ribs.
Collapsed thumb and multiple fractures on both sides of his ribs.
Right, thank you. So anyhow, he won't play, and I'm guessing Jameis Winston will start. And you're going to see, and of course you're going to, what's that?
You'll see Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston.
Right. I think you'll see more of Jameis Winston, but I do think you'll see Hill in and a lot of special packages in place. And I'll tell you what, if Jameis Winston plays, I am willing to bet a hamburger on the show, a steak. I'm willing to meet you. The Falcons pick 6 him on Sunday, and Atlanta wins this puppy. That's what I'm willing to say. And I say if they can win out, and that's a big if, they can get a playoff spot. If they lose one game, it's treacherous. More than one, and they're done. I think they got to win out. But I don't think they're going to win out. And they played New Orleans twice, and Tampa Bay twice, and Kansas City. Go ahead.
Let's flip the script, though. Let's say they do win out. Let's say they do get to the playoff. Remember how you said Raheem Morris can't get the job? What if Raheem Morris wins out and gets to the playoffs? Is he your Falcons' next head coach?
I still think Arthur Blank's going to look for a big name. I really do. I think he's going to look for an established head coach who has a huge track record and a big name, and the Falcon franchise is good enough to attract that type of coach because Arthur Blank is going to pay him.
Right. But I do think they win out.
I don't think so neither. It would be an awesome task. Could you imagine beating Tampa twice, New Orleans twice, and Kansas City once? Can you imagine that, JJ? I can't imagine it, man.
Jameis did beat Atlanta one time last year. Maybe the magic wears off, but I like your prediction on the pick 6. Jameis throws a bunch of them, but he did get LASIK. Maybe that helps.
We'll see. Is that game in New Orleans or Atlanta? Because I can't remember. It's in New Orleans, isn't it?
New Orleans.
It's in New Orleans. I tell you what, you can throw the records out when these folks get together. You can forget the records out. This is the Falcons' main rival. The Saints and Falcons have been going at it since the late 60s. They hate each other. I don't care what the line says, what the records are, where it's played. They can play out right here in my cul-de-sac. It does not matter. I would love to see. I can't wait for the Falcons to play this game because they're going to have to play their best game of the season in order for them to have a chance.
And it's always, like you said, throw the records out. This is truly, right now, if you look at the rivalries in the NFL, this is one of the better ones in the last 10 years. It's been competitive. The teams have been to the Super Bowls recently. It is the rivalry in the NFC South. This could change things around for the Falcons season if they do manage to get a pick 6 and a win. but I'm not with you. I'm not picking against New Orleans. They have too much talent around Jameis.
Oh, I didn't say that. I just said they're going to pick six Jameis Winston, and I actually think the Falcons are going to win this Sunday. Now, with it, oops, I kind of gave that away too.
That's why I said
I'm picking the home team. Do you believe it? As Al Michaels would say, do you believe in miracles? And all of a sudden, we do have a miracle. We have a miracle on the line. DeShaun Tate, our college basketball and NBA insider on ATL Prime Sports, my good friend, former 92.9 The Game, a basketball, what do I want to call it, savant. And I still think he is a savant. And I'm glad you're on with us, man. I am so happy to talk hoops with you. How you doing, buddy?
Man, I'm really happy to be on with you guys, too. Thank you so much for allowing me to share my passion on your platform. Overly grateful and appreciative of that. A little tired, getting ready for draft. So you got the anxiety / tired of reading things and hearing things and stuff flying around all over the place. But nonetheless, I'm sure when Wednesday at 8 o'clock rolls around, I'm sure I'll be like a kid on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day.
Yeah.
DeShaun, you got a little bit of Dickie V in you, man. Not the, the diaper dandy, baby, but you got the excitement like Dickie V has for basketball, and you have these way of words where, I would love to see you as a color commentator doing basketball because I think you would be outstanding at it. Your descriptions and your analysis of players and their ability and what they can and cannot do are really good.
Thank you for the accolade, man, for the compliment and for the kind gesture.
See what I mean? He knows how to do it.
Expecting any money in return or anything like that. I hope not anyway. That check is guaranteed to bounce, my friend. I can bet you that one.
It's going to bounce probably in my way and JJ's way and in Wade's way too. So we're all going to bounce. But all right, let's do my favorite of the two between the NBA and college. It's to me, it's not close. JJ's is the NBA, and mine is college. And I got to talk about us, Michigan and Michigan State. Michigan has the #1 recruiting class in the country right now. Tell us about that recruiting class.
Yeah, well, I mean, it really consists of Diabate, who's a top 10 recruiter, in addition to Caleb Houston is a top 10 recruit. Obviously, Juwan Howard's been doing a great job. Kobe Buffkin is obviously also in that same conversation, who's a 4-star. The other two were 5 stars. And then you've also got Frankie Collins, who's been playing really, really good basketball and making a name for himself over the course of the last, year or so, even more so the last few weeks. It's kind of crazy to just kind of watch how he has kind of catapulted up the rankings a little bit, at least in my opinion and in my mind. I've seen him on TV quite a bit, but it's crazy to think that both Chet Holmgren, the #1 senior in the 2021 class, and Jaden Hardy, who is originally from Detroit, playing over on the West Coast now in Las Vegas for Coronado High School, are both considering U of M at this point. I don't know how many of these different openings that they have and scholarships available that Juwan Howard has. But I tell you what, he is putting Tom Izzo up against some really heated and hot pressure because we know that they got the Imani Bates thing. But nonetheless, Juwan
Michigan
Howard
State does, yes.
Yeah, correct. Michigan State does. So he's definitely putting Tom Izzo underneath the heat lamp like the fries at McDonald's a little bit with this recruiting class. And just to imagine, if they can find a way, Michigan State that is, to get Imani Bates to reclassify along with a couple other guys and have some really good classes just like Michigan, dude, we're going to be talking about something that we've never seen before amongst youthful talent between two institutions that I don't think can really be matched by anybody else outside of the names Duke and Carolina.
Well, DeShaun, Michigan and Ohio State had its 10-year war in football in the 70s. And I could see a 10-year war here, and I can see Tom Izzo still at Michigan State for the next 10 years because he's just a basketball junkie. And I can see a 10-year war between Michigan and Michigan State. And I think Juwan Howard and Tom Izzo both respect each other a ton. And I think it would be clean, hard-nosed basketball like it always is between these guys when they get together. And I'm a native of Michigan, and you're a native of Michigan, even though we live here in Metro Atlanta. I would pay to see that every time.
Me too.
Yeah, you and me both. I was gonna say that too, and plus on top of that, I've told people about Juwan Howard and the way he's gonna get some of these recruits. I mean, they got a guy to give a verbal commit named Isaiah Todd, who's now going to play in the G League. He decommitted verbally from Michigan. And then, right before that happened, they were expected to also be able to land a guy who I think is going to be he's my favorite freshman incoming for this year. His name's not Cade Cunningham, but his name is Josh Christopher. He's playing at Arizona State. I was really, really sold that he was going to pick Michigan. And once that happened, where you're getting these decommits and they're deciding to go other places, I knew that Juwan Howard was onto something, okay, because they just kind of came in out of nowhere, and so many players that were top-ranked players, top 10, top 25s, and so forth, and everything and anything in between had gone from not even paying attention to Michigan at all to all of a sudden putting Michigan in their top 5 choices with Dukes and Kentuckys and Kansas and Carolinas. And while they didn't pick Michigan, I still believe that was just the beginning of something good to come for Juwan Howard. And I think that it helps a lot that he is an African-American coach. Okay, I think it helps a lot of his NBA experience playing the game and coaching in it. When you have a guy like LeBron James that you could just pick up the phone and make a telephone call to, that's the cool kids, the new generation, the millennials. That's their Michael Jordan. So that's always impressive in its own right, and I think he's going to do a phenomenal job there at Michigan after this year.
I can't wait. I just can't wait. I can't wait to the first time they play each other this year. I don't care if there's fans, no fans, nothing but broadcasters and ball boys in the joint. It'll be physical, and it'll be clean. It'll be hard. Each team is ranked in the top 25. And I can't wait for it. You mentioned Michigan State real quick. The fellas got questions to ask. Michigan State goes and plays at Duke in an empty arena, and that's coming up quickly.
Yeah, I think that's their best chance to not just beat Duke, but to find a way to sneak out a win at Cameron Indoor Stadium where so much of their fan base really helps them so much. Probably got the most raucous crowd in any sport that I can really think of, to be honest with you. And I think that helps Michigan State's chances a little bit, that there won't be fans, because, yes, Duke is still going to be young and Duke's still going to be very talented, give them credit. But it looks a little different in Cameron Indoor, as you can imagine, or can't imagine, because we've never seen it before without the fans. But, we're talking about two teams that I expect to be good, maybe not as good as we typically see them. Duke is a team that has a couple guys I think are going to fly under the radar past a lot of people. One of them being Mark Williams, a big center in the middle. The other one being named Jamin Brakefield, who's a little undersized, but he's tough as nails, and he's like a Swiss Army knife. And Michigan State, they're going to be Michigan State. I'm under the impression that Sparty is just kind of looking forward to a season in which they can kind of hurry up and get it out of the way, win, lose, draw, championship, or whatever, what have you, but more so looking forward to the incoming recruiting classes over the course of the next 2 seasons.
All right. Hey, DeShaun, this is Wayne in Memphis.
What's up, Wayne?
Hey, I'm not quite as excited about basketball, college basketball as you are, because right now, Memphis only thing they've got scheduled is this crossover classic up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and they're open at I guess preseason or beginning season set of games against St. Mary's. But right now, we don't have any type of schedule set up for this upcoming season. And if they do, we're not even sure they're going to be letting people in the FedEx Forum. But, I know this is the third year for Penny Hardaway as coach at Memphis. And, who knows how they're going to treat this season.
Well, it's funny you say that because between Penny Hardaway and Juwan Howard, between two guys that are the two sophomore coaches, I guess you could say, in the college game, they do a great job at recruiting. But Musa Cisse coming on campus, I think, really helps them a lot. A five-star center who I really believe is going to give people at least a little bit more of a glimpse of what they kind of expected James Wiseman to be. He's not James Wiseman. I don't expect him to be, but I think he can be more than a poor man's version. Boogie Ellis is a player that I really believe has to step up for Penny Hardaway and the Tigers this year. He came in, he decommitted from Duke and decided to go over there play with Penny, and as good as he looked going into that situation at Duke, he didn't look nearly as good going into Memphis with it, but he still has a little bit of that, and he has a chip on his shoulder, and he can score. You got a guy like Lester Quiones over there as well,
yeah.
And DJ Jeffries, who I love DJ Jeffries more than most people do personally. I like him a lot. He's got a really good body strength. He shed a couple pounds a little bit, get off some of that baby fat, and I think he's really going to improve his game and be set for a breakout season.
Memphis always plays a quick game, so the quicker you can get these guys, the better. And just on a side note, Memphis is pretty much over James Wiseman.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You're listening to DeShaun Tate right here on ATL Prime Sports. You can find him on Twitter at Tate's Take Hoops. DeShaun, good to hear from you again, man. Let's stay local. UGA, Georgia Tech. What can we expect from those two teams, the Dogs and the Jackets?
Well, it's funny you even asked me that. I brought on onto my podcast earlier today Ken Segura from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, beat writer for Georgia Tech. And, I mean, they're going to have those guards ready to go. It seems like, as far as me being in a lot of those press conferences over the course of the last 5 years, he's always really kind of Josh Pastner kind of preaching and talking about how they need to get older. That's one of their biggest issues. Well, that's not the biggest issue they have right now anymore, because they do have, 4 seniors on the roster, 2 juniors on the roster. Mike DeVoe is really good, a guard. He's my favorite player on the team. Obviously the heart and soul and the emotional leader of the team, and Jose Alvarado. We're talking about senior-led guys. And, of course, they get 2 transfers that are originally from Georgia, but transferring over from USC, and Kyle Sturdivant and Jordan Usher. So I think that they're all set from the guard position. Now, when it comes to guys like Moses Wright, who I really believe kind of had a similar season to the way Ben Lammers did when he was transitioning from sophomore to junior. Now Moses Wright, even though they don't have James Banks, he's taking on a huge load in the front court, and I think that'll help them significantly. The problem, I think, for Georgia Tech will be the fact that they're always so good defensively, but offensively they're so poor. They're one of the worst free throw shooting teams in the country, one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the country, and I don't think that helps them the least bit. Now, as far as Georgia goes, I think everything's pretty much, for the most part, going to be surrounded around Severe Wheeler, who I think is a sophomore now, if I'm not mistaken, and a speedy point guard, but got a little girth to him, a little bully to him. Kind of reminds me of Kyle Lowry. Not saying he's going to be the player that Kyle Lowry is, but that's what you can expect in the type of style that he plays with. And I tell you one thing Tom Crean has to do. He has to make that Anthony Edwards recruitment kind of pay off for him some way, somehow, to land some other guys, because if not, then it's essentially like Edwards just kind of got away scot-free and it didn't really do much for Tom Crean on the back end. I don't expect for this team to be very good by any stretch of the imagination. However, I will say enough to say that it is the SEC, who typically is not all that great from top to bottom. So maybe Georgia can sneak in there somewhere, but I'm not very optimistic.
It's not like the Big Ten now, is it, DeShaun?
No. It's not even close. Let me tell you something. This is basketball. This ain't football. This ain't. I call it that football stuff. This ain't that football stuff.
All right. Well, you know what, DeShaun, real quick, and then Gigi, I'll ask you. We'll start with the NBA with him. Give me your early Final Four.
Oh my goodness! Wow. Sheesh. That one I think is something that's a little bit more on the tougher side, just because these are freshmen we haven't really seen. I will tell you this much, because of the fact that something just came down earlier today where the entire NCAA tournament is going to be played in Indianapolis. It's always going to be hard to go against Duke when they're playing in Indy, for crying out loud. If I'm not mistaken, I think they won a title in '91 there. They won a title in 2015.
Right.
And they won another one somewhere sprinkled up in there in Indy. It's always going to be tough to beat them out. So I guess I just have to kind of put them in there at that point. A team that I think is really dangerous, and I'm not saying they're a lock for the Final Four, but if there's a team out there that is very close to pulling off the same thing from a mid-major standpoint that Dayton did last year, just close to it. And Dayton was a team I thought was going to the Final Four. If there's a mid-major team out there, I think the team is the Richmond Spiders, who is very guard-led, similar to Georgia Tech, and they're a really good team as well. If I'm going to throw out two others, I guess I'm not as high on Gonzaga as a lot of other people are, nor Baylor or anybody like that. But I am under the impression that Wisconsin can be one of those teams. They're literally returning everybody back from a season ago. And I don't know. I think it's a little bit more on the tougher side, but if I had to go with somebody, maybe Texas Tech.
Wow, I'm surprised you didn't say Michigan State, because I have a weird feeling that Rocket Watts is going to be really good. And Michigan State's going to be one of those teams that starts out slower out of the gate, and at the end of the year, they're going to hit on all cylinders. And I don't know, something tells me they're going to make the Final Four, but we'll see. I probably is music to your ears, but we only got about a couple minutes with you, DeShaun, so let's go to the NBA. JJ, go ahead.
Man, got two-parter for you here, DeShaun. Do they take it 6 or do they trade? And do the Hawks make the playoffs this year? Because I think they do.
Well, what they'll do, I'm not exactly sure of that quite all the way just yet. But if I'm Travis Schlenk, which I'm sure he's not beating down DeShaun Tate's door, asking him for any kind of advice or anything like that as a general manager. But I would definitely say that what I'm doing is I'm holding on to that number 6 pick for as long as I can, waiting until one of these silly GMs decide that they've got their laser-focused eye on a player that they want, but they're not really sure how they're going to move up and get them. That's where I'm Travis Schlenk, and I'm just dangling that carrot right over their head to say, hey, you want this player? You want to move up to come get him? Come and get him. But you're going to have to release some adults to me, because that's certainly what this team needs. No more starters under the age of 25 anymore for the Atlanta Hawks. But if I have to find a way to pick somebody, which would be my second choice, then I think that you go with a guy who is familiar with the culture here in Atlanta already, because he's from here, and you feel your need. And that guy is Isaac Okoro out of Auburn. A lot of people going to show a lot of love to Sharif Cooper, who's now a freshman at Auburn, but they played together back at McEachern High School when they were in school, and everybody loves Cooper. But the guy who was the Draymond Green, the Swiss Army knife, the heart and soul of that team, and did all the dirty work, was Okoro. He's very coachable. He's a good kid. You need defense anyways. He can defend about 3 or 4 different positions depending on how small ball you really want to go. And he knows his role. His specialty is defense. He knows what he's good at, and he loves to do it. You won't have to beg him to do it. So that's what I would do if I was the Hawks at 6 if he's there.
Hey, DeShaun, where does Cassius Winston go to, the former guard at Michigan State? That kid, to me, is one of the toughest players out there. I think he's built for the next level. Could he get to Atlanta, or will he be gone? Where will he end up?
I mean, I think he could definitely be there at Atlanta. I think this is one of those situations where it's so hard to tell right around number 50 of the draft to say, and especially if you're Atlanta too, and you want to be able to give either Trae Young a breather or something along those lines. Maybe, without Trae Young having so many different responsibilities of having to set guys up, plus to score the ball, plus play defense, which we know he's not really all that good at. You want somebody a little bit more on the experience side, and that's not necessarily Cassius Winston. Now, that might be him from a standpoint of coming in and being experienced after doing 4 years of college and coming from a great program. But, I will say enough to say I don't think that'll be the worst thing in the world for them. Maybe defensively it will, but from an IQ standpoint, even though he's not very athletic, he kind of reminds me and puts me in the mode of someone similar to like a Jalen Brunson or an Andre Miller, who I think can really stick it out in this league for quite a long time and make a decent amount of money. But, whoever gets Cassius Winston, without question, is going to get a competitor. They're going to get a winner and a guy that comes from a winning pedigree and a winning program like Michigan State.
Oh, there was one NBA question I needed to ask you. Doggone it. I understand the Lakers star forward there decided to go ahead and opt out, and now he's a free agent, Anthony Davis. Do you think he'll re-sign with the Lakers real quick?
I think eventually he will at some point. They've got different kind of fish to fry. They've already got their point guard position kind of sewed up. And by the way, just a little nugget between us four, you heard it here first. I think that there are some behind-the-scenes talks quite a bit about Rajon Rondo maybe coming over to the Hawks as well. But besides that fact, sticking just primarily with the Lakers, I think eventually, there will be a situation where he'll opt back in and go ahead and go ahead and get the money that he can get for right now. Maybe try and do a 1 year here and there, similar to the way LeBron James kind of has been doing it over the course and the duration of the last few years. But Anthony Davis is a true talent, and I mean, it's really hard to walk away from a championship at this point.
I agree.
Wayne, did you have a question for? I'm sorry. Did you have a question for DeShaun? Anything Memphis, the Grizzlies, or anything?
The only thing going on at Memphis is they hired an assistant coach, Darko Ragojevic. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. That's really all I know at Memphis right now.
DeShaun, you with us?
I can't tell you that I know a whole lot about that. I don't want to steer you in the wrong direction. So while I can't say that, one thing that I can say is I think that skies could be the limit for this team, who is right there competing for the 8th spot in the West. And obviously everybody talks about John Morant, and hopefully Jaren Jackson Jr. Gets to a point where he's not on the IR as much as he's shown over the course of the last 2 to 3 seasons. But I like what they're doing there. It'll be really interesting to see what will happen in the draft and who's making moves to try and build around these guys. And I'm really excited to see, what's going to happen with that, because Memphis is a big basketball town. I mean, there aren't too many places in the South that treat their basketball with the royalty and uphold the way that they do in comparison to football. And I mean, it's a great town. I've only been there once, but I hung around a little bit, talked to Penny, and did some of that type of stuff. And it's nothing but class acts up there in Memphis. Plus, they got some really good barbecue.
Oh, yeah.
The NBA start around Christmas. Sorry about that, Wayne.
That's all right.
22nd, I believe the NBA will be tipping off, and that's why we're going to have such a very, very small window to get anything started before the games tip off. I didn't think they'd start that soon. I thought the soonest would be Christmas, and even then I thought that might be a little bit too early, especially with all the cases that are spiking up. Maybe getting closer to MLK with the Black Lives Matter movements and all this other type of stuff. I thought that was something that was probably a little bit more ideal. Nonetheless, I mean, look at it. We're less than 48 hours away from the NBA draft, and shortly after that, you've got to get these draft guys in there. You got to get paperwork,
right?
Little, pre-camps or whatever, what have you.
Right.
Because less than a month later, the season's going to be tipping off. We're crying out loud. So before you guys know it, you lay your head down a couple nights, and before you know it, you wake up and it's going to be time to tip some basketball off again, and nobody's going to be happier about that than me.
DeShaun, thanks so much for coming on, partner. I really appreciate it. We'll talk to you down the line. You got to have me on your show there, man.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. As soon as I get some of this stuff squared away, the holidays are coming up and everybody wants toys. But after we get some things squared away, we're definitely going to make sure that happens.
Well, I know the only toy you want is the basketball season to start, so we'll get your toy delivered to you real soon.
Thank you much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on, my friend. Take care.
Absolutely. You as well.
All right, DeShaun Tate here on ATL Prime Sports, our basketball insider, basketball savant, formerly of 92.9 The Game here in Atlanta. Hopefully, when things change after the pandemic, he'll be able to hop back on with them. Guys, let's go ahead and give it our pick six. Wayne, take it away.
All right. Well, first pick six, number 9, Atlanta at number 3, Ohio State. Ohio State is favored by 20.5.
Oh, Indiana and Ohio State? Is that what you said?
That's
yeah, okay. I thought you said Atlanta and Ohio State.
That's Indiana and Ohio at Ohio State. Ohio State 20.5 points.
Man, that's a really tough spread. I think the Hoosiers will cover, but barely.
Yeah.
Buckeyes by 31. Easy.
What about you, Wayne?
I'm taking Indiana to win the game.
Whoa! To win the game?
Yep.
I tell you what, man. Holy smokes. If they win the game, that would be an upset. It wouldn't be epic, but it would be pretty good size.
All right. The next one we got is Sun Belt Conference. Appalachia State at Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina is favored 4.5. I look for Coastal Carolina to cover that spread easily.
I've got them covering too. What about you, JJ?
I got the Chanticleers. I'm not dreaming. They're going 8-0.
All right. Next one up, we got number 10, Wisconsin at Northwestern. Wisconsin favored by 7.5. They might win, but I do not think they will cover.
Oh, I think they'll cover, and I think they'll cover by 17-20. Have you seen that massive offensive line and defensive line for Wisconsin? They run the fullback and go in there like John Madden calling a game. Bop, they just pop people all over the place. I love Wisconsin, and I love them big.
All right, how about you, JJ?
I think this will be a lot closer than the experts think. I think Northwestern has a lot bigger shot than a lot of people are giving credit for, but I am taking the Badgers.
All right. Next up is the number 14 Oklahoma State at number 18 Oklahoma. Oklahoma's favored 7. I look for Oklahoma to cover that spread.
The game is called Bedlam for a reason. I think Oklahoma wins, but Oklahoma State covers.
Okay. How about you, JJ?
How about you, JJ?
I am picking the mullet each and every Cowboys.
Give him the haircut. Give him the mullet. He's got Oklahoma State to not only cover, but to win it.
All right. Last college game is Mississippi State at number 13 Georgia. Georgia's favored by 24.5. I look for Georgia to cover that, but maybe just barely.
Oh man, I think that's the toughest game on the board to predict because which quarterback is going to show up? Because we all know Mississippi State's going to jam the box. They still can't stop the run very well. So for that reason, I think Georgia wins, but I don't think it's by 24.5. I think it's by like 23.
I think Georgia will win that game by about 21 points. I think they'll win in the fourth quarter, driving the ball down the field, eating away the clock, and wearing down that Mississippi State.
They better have that game won by the third quarter. I mean, I know we got Georgia's got quarterback issues with JT Daniels. He's supposed to play this week. We shall see. All right, Wayne, let's go to the last game.
All right, JJ, what have you got?
Pick, huh?
Oh, I thought you picked it. You picked it.
No, I haven't picked it yet.
You said the dogs wouldn't cover.
I said the dogs will win by about 21 points. Mississippi State will not cover. I didn't finish, but hey.
Oh, I'm sorry. Whatever. Go ahead.
All right. Last one is NFL Falcons at the Saints. They've got the Saints 4.5 point favorites. I'm taking the Falcons to win the whole game, and they're not even going to let the Saints score in the last quarter.
Some team's going to come marching in. It's not going to be the New Orleans Saints. It's going to be the Atlanta Falcons. Jameis Winston's going to throw a pick six, and Jones is going to hard step that puppy into the end zone. The ATL wins it outright.
I don't know about this one. This
You're
is
killing me, Smalls.
I think I've had to pick this season. I'm going both ways. I don't like Jameis Winston in the game, but you know what? The guy has been playing behind Drew Brees. Maybe he has learned how to control the football. I like the Saints to cover and to move to 8-2 and most likely go on and win the division. I like the Saints.
So you think the Falcons are going to lose this game?
I do think the Falcons will
They're
lose.
going to be a desperate football team, and I think they're going to play like one. And I think they're going to win this football game. I really do. This is a rivalry. We talked about it earlier. Anything can and will happen. And look at Wayne's face. He's glowing while I'm saying it. JJ Wayne thinks it's a traitor. So we'll find out. Fellas, that's the end of a fantastic show this evening. I really appreciate it. Want to thank DeShaun Tate and Dave Cohen for coming on as always. JJ, I was going to have your baby sit on your lap, but that can't happen. So you'll have to bring her on. We won't have a show next week. We'll be back after the Thanksgiving holiday. I'm Todd Corder. He's JJ on the other side of the ATL. That's our producer, Wayne. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Same time, same place. Get you one of these.
All right.